when ancient wisdom meets the modern mind. In an age defined by overstimulation, emotional volatility, and constant psychological pressure, the human mind is more distracted and distressed than ever before. Despite unprecedented access to comfort, technology, and information, anxiety, depression, and identity confusion continue to rise. This paradox has led many thinkers back to an unexpected source: Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that treated the mind not as a fragile entity to be protected, but as a faculty to be trained. Stoicism was never about emotional coldness or passive endurance. It was a rigorous psychological system designed to cultivate inner stability, clarity of judgment, and resilience under pressure. Long before neuroscience and clinical psychology existed, Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius identified the root of psychological suffering, not events themselves, but the beliefs we attach to them. Modern psychology has arrived at similar conclusions. Cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and resilience research all echo Stoic principles: control of perception, emotional regulation through acceptance, disciplined habit formation, and meaning-centered living. Where Stoicism provides philosophical structure, psychology provides empirical validation. Together, Stoicism and psychology form a complete framework for mental mastery. They teach not how to escape suffering, but how to metabolize it into strength. This integration offers a path toward inner freedom, calm without numbness, confidence without ego, and resilience without rigidity. Carefully pay attention while I take you through with these points. Number 1. Control versus influence. The psychological foundation of emotional stability. At the heart of Stoicism lies the dichotomy of control, the understanding that some things are within our control, thoughts, judgments, actions, and others are not, people's opinions, outcomes, fate. Modern psychology strongly supports this idea through locus of control theory. Individuals with a strong internal locus of control experience lower anxiety, greater resilience, and better emotional regulation. Psychological distress often arises not from events themselves, but from misplaced control, trying to manage what is inherently uncontrollable. Stoics recognized this centuries ago. When you attempt to control others' behavior, external validation, or unpredictable outcomes, your nervous system remains in a constant state of threat. This fuels rumination, frustration, and chronic stress. Stoicism teaches psychological discipline, redirecting mental energy toward what you can influence: your response, perception, and effort. This aligns with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which was directly inspired by Stoic philosophy. CBT helps individuals reframe irrational beliefs and reduce emotional suffering by altering thought patterns rather than external conditions. When practiced consistently, this principle rewires emotional reactions. You stop catastrophizing and begin responding with clarity. Your brain learns safety through acceptance, not resistance. Emotional stability becomes a trained skill, not a personality trait. True power emerges when you release control over outcomes and master control over meaning. Number 2. Perception shapes. Reality, cognitive reframing, and Stoic judgment. Stoicism asserts a radical idea. Events themselves are neutral, meaning is assigned by the mind. Psychology confirms this through cognitive appraisal theory, which shows that emotional reactions depend on interpretation, not objective reality. Two people can experience the same event and feel entirely different emotions based on how they perceive it. Stoics called this process judgment. When you label an experience as bad, unfair, or humiliating, your brain triggers stress responses, elevated cortisol, emotional reactivity, and defensive behavior. Psychology refers to this as automatic negative thoughts, ANTs, which distort reality and magnify suffering. Stoic practice trains awareness between stimulus and response. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause and question the interpretation. Is this truly harmful or merely uncomfortable? This mirrors modern techniques like cognitive restructuring, where beliefs are examined and softened. Over time, perception becomes flexible rather than rigid. You no longer personalize setbacks or inflate insults. The mind becomes less reactive and more discerning. Emotional freedom arises not from avoiding hardship, but from neutralizing its psychological charge. This skill is transformative. When perception changes, stress decreases, self-esteem stabilizes, and emotional maturity deepens. You no longer outsource your inner peace to circumstances. You become psychologically sovereign, rooted, calm, and internally directed. Number 3, emotional regulation. Through acceptance, not suppression. A common misconception is that Stoicism promotes emotional suppression. In reality, Stoics advocated emotional regulation through understanding, which aligns closely with modern psychology. Suppression increases stress and emotional rebound, while acceptance-based strategies reduce emotional intensity and long-term distress. Stoics believed emotions arise from judgments. By examining the belief beneath the emotion, you reduce its power. Psychology echoes this through acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which teaches that resisting emotions strengthens them, while acceptance allows them to pass naturally. When you accept an emotion, anger, sadness, fear, without labeling it as weakness, your nervous system calms. The brain interprets acceptance as safety. This lowers amygdala activation and restores executive control in the prefrontal cortex. Stoicism trains you to observe emotions without being consumed by them. You feel deeply, but you do not become the feeling. This creates emotional intelligence rather than emotional numbness. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. The result is psychological strength, the ability to remain grounded during adversity. You don't deny pain, you digest it. Over time, emotions lose their dominance, and reason regains leadership. This balance is the true Stoic ideal, not emotional coldness, but emotional mastery. Number 4, voluntary discomfort and psychological resilience. Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, intentionally exposing themselves to hardship to build mental strength. Modern psychology supports this through stress inoculation theory, which shows that controlled exposure to difficulty builds resilience and emotional tolerance. Avoidance weakens the psyche. When discomfort is avoided, the brain interprets it as danger, reinforcing fear responses. Stoicism reverses this pattern. By choosing discomfort, cold, hunger, silence, discipline, you teach the nervous system that hardship is survivable. This practice strengthens distress tolerance, a key psychological trait linked to perseverance, emotional regulation, and confidence. You stop being fragile. Minor inconveniences no longer feel catastrophic. Psychologically, voluntary discomfort recalibrates expectations. Gratitude increases. Entitlement decreases. The brain adapts to less, making more feel abundant. This counters modern overstimulation, which erodes attention span and emotional resilience. The Stoic does not seek suffering, but does not fear it. This mental posture creates inner security. When real hardship arrives, you are prepared. Your identity is no longer dependent on comfort. Strength becomes internal, durable, and self-generated. Number 5, detachment from external validation and ego regulation. Stoicism teaches detachment from praise, status, and approval. Psychology identifies over-reliance on external validation as a source of fragile self-esteem. When worth depends on others, emotional stability collapses under criticism or rejection. Stoics trained the ego to remain quiet. They measured self-worth by virtue and integrity, not applause. Psychology supports this through self-determination theory, which emphasizes intrinsic values over external rewards for long-term well-being. When validation is removed, many experience anxiety or identity confusion. Stoic practice prepares the mind for this by grounding identity internally. You value effort over outcome, character over image. This detachment doesn't eliminate ambition, it purifies it. You act without desperation. You succeed without arrogance. You fail without self-destruction. Psychologically, this reduces narcissistic tendencies, comparison anxiety, and performance pressure. You become calm in success and steady in loss. Ego loosens its grip. Authentic confidence replaces performative confidence. Number 6, Mortality awareness and meaning-centered psychology. Stoics practiced memento mori, contemplation of death. Far from morbid, psychology shows that mortality awareness increases gratitude, clarity, and purpose. Existential psychology confirms that denying death fuels anxiety, while accepting it fosters meaning. When death is acknowledged, trivial concerns shrink, priorities sharpen, time becomes sacred. This awareness interrupts procrastination and shallow living. Stoicism teaches that life's impermanence demands intentional living. Psychology calls this meaning-centered resilience, the ability to endure suffering through purpose. Rather than fearing death, Stoics used it as a psychological anchor. Each moment became valuable. Each action became deliberate. This practice reduces fear-based decision-making and increases courage. When death is no longer avoided mentally, life is lived more fully, honestly, and bravely. Number 7. Discipline, habit formation, and identity reinforcement. Stoicism emphasizes daily discipline of thought, behavior, and desire. Psychology confirms that identity is built through repeated actions, not motivation. Habits shape self-concept. Each disciplined choice reinforces a self-image of control and competence. Over time, discipline becomes identity. The Stoic doesn't rely on mood, they rely on principle. Psychologically, this strengthens self-efficacy, the belief that you can act effectively. This belief predicts success more than talent or intelligence. Discipline stabilizes the mind. Chaos decreases. Consistency increases. The brain thrives on predictability and structure. Stoicism teaches that freedom comes not from indulgence, but from self-command. Psychology agrees. Mastery over impulses leads to lasting confidence and inner peace. Number 8. Inner freedom as the highest psychological achievement. For Stoics, true freedom was internal. Psychology confirms that external freedom without internal regulation leads to anxiety and addiction. Inner freedom arises when emotions, thoughts, and impulses are governed consciously. This is psychological sovereignty. You are not controlled by fear, desire, or circumstance. You respond with intention. When the mind is trained, suffering decreases, not because life becomes easier, but because perception becomes wiser. This is the ultimate integration of Stoicism and psychology, a mind that cannot be enslaved by chaos. Conclusion: inner mastery in an uncontrollable world. The union of Stoicism and psychology reveals a profound truth. The greatest freedom available to a human being is not found in external circumstances, but in command of the inner world. While the world remains unpredictable, marked by loss, uncertainty, rejection, and change, the mind does not have to mirror that chaos. Stoicism teaches us that peace is not granted by fortune. It is cultivated through perception, discipline, and conscious response. Psychology confirms that emotional suffering is not a life sentence, but a learned pattern, one that can be rewired through awareness, acceptance, and deliberate practice. Together, they dismantle the illusion that happiness depends on control over life, and replace it with a more powerful realization. Stability arises from self-governance. Through mastery of judgment, regulation of emotion, tolerance of discomfort, and detachment from external validation, the individual becomes psychologically resilient and internally anchored. Fear loses its authority. Ego softens. Meaning deepens. What once overwhelmed now instructs. This is not a path of detachment from life, but deeper engagement with it, unclouded by panic, impulsivity, or false identity. Stoicism and psychology do not promise ease. They offer strength with clarity. In a world that cannot be controlled, the trained mind becomes the final refuge and the ultimate form of power.